So this is a traditional southern mooncake. The outside's got a layer of pastry, the inside is a filling of either nuts or seed paste that's sweetened, and then in the very center is a salted yolk. And now traditionally you don't have to have the salted yolk. Some of them do, some of them don't. And these are eaten at the Full Moon Festival or the Mid-Autumn Festival, which is kind of like Thanksgiving is for Americans in the sense that the whole family comes together and you have about a 3-day holiday. And because it's on the lunar calendar, it happens at a different time every year, but it's usually about the end of September. In the last decade or two, they've come out with a lot of like fusion styles. So this one here is called a snow skin mooncake, and it's got a layer of mochi on the outside. And they even have ice cream mooncakes from Haagen-Dazs that are extremely expensive. And then Starbucks makes a bunch of different like chocolate or coffee flavored ones. Now what we're making today are 3 different kinds of chocolate truffle mooncakes. So we've got a sweet red bean paste with dried fig, the next one is sweet black sesame truffle, and the last one is a pumpkin spice. So the first thing to do a couple days in advance is to make your cured egg yolks. And traditionally you would have a salted egg yolk, but I like this version a lot better. It's made with half salt and half sugar, and it's from a Bon Appetit magazine recipe, but in this case we're going to use erythritol and xylitol instead of the sugar. And then I'm flavoring 2 of the different batches so that they fit in with the flavors of the filling better. And I'll put the recipe quantities for everything on the TPH website and link that down below. Now once you've got your cure all prepped, you're going to take quail yolks, because usually a full egg yolk won't, like a chicken egg yolk, won't fit inside the little molds that I have for mooncakes. But if you find a bigger mold or you want to use a cupcake tin instead, feel free to use normal chicken eggs. So you want to make sure that each little yolk has its own spot and that they're not touching. That way when they cure, they'll still be in their original shapes. And you want to make sure that they're fully covered with as much of the cure as possible. After a few hours, this is what it looks like. Some of that water starts leaking out of the yolks. That's what you want. That's good. Next, you want to set up a drying rack, and after at least 24 hours have gone by, ideally maybe 48 hours, you can take your yolks out of their little sugar and salt mix, and you want to really gently rinse them off. They might be a little bit hard to find. I would recommend actually using your hands instead of a spoon for this. They're not as delicate as fresh yolks are, but they're still a little bit delicate. And this is what they should look like. They'll be a little bit shiny and maybe a little bit squishy. And make sure you remember which ones are which if you flavored them differently. You're going to want to put them in a dehydrator or in your oven at the very, very lowest temperature for at least 5 hours. So next you want to throw all your pumpkin pie filling ingredients into a blender, blend them up really well, and then mix in your melted white chocolate. You might want to do this in batches because it doesn't combine very easily if you dump it all in together at once. And do the same thing for your other fillings. Get your black sesame paste and add in your melted chocolate. And then for the fig paste, you can take some dried figs and put them in your food processor, or you can just chop them up really fine. And next you're going to need to find something that's round shaped, that's a little bit smaller than your mooncake mold. And we're going to use that to cut circles of our fig paste. So just flatten out your fig paste to a pretty thin layer and just carve out a circle. Now the first time it was pretty easy, but after a few tries this is what happened, and it's pretty simple to fix. You just have to push in a little bit, and when you pull it out and it's a little bit squished or curved, you just flatten it out and you're good to go. Next we're gonna melt our white chocolate. You can use pre-bought sugar-free white chocolate, or you can make your own. I'll link a recipe down below. Now if you're using chocolate with real cocoa butter in it, you're going to need to temper it. And Anne Reardon from How to Cook That has great videos on how to temper chocolate, so I'll link her recipes down below. And if you're not using a chocolate that has cocoa butter in it, you don't need to temper it. And there's actually a cheating way to do this. If you really suck at tempering chocolate or you just can't be bothered, all you have to do is put it in the fridge to set it up, but then you have to remember that you can't really ever take it out of the fridge for a very long period of time because it will soften up if it gets warmed up to room temperature. Now this mold I think I found on Taobao, which is kind of like the Chinese version of Amazon except bigger. And I'm sure they sell them in the States and in other countries. I'll try and put a link down below for one from American Amazon. So once your chocolate's ready, dump it into your molds, let it sit for a bit, shake it around, try and get the chocolate down into all those little crevices and try and get all the air bubbles out. And after it sit for a little bit, dump it all out so all the excess can drip away and leave it on a cooling rack upside down like that until it's set, or you can put it into the fridge if you're doing that. And next you want to get your fillings and put them all into little Ziploc bags like this, or a pastry bag if you have one. And just twist up the end and fold it underneath. And now you just snip off the tip and you try and pipe in your filling without getting any air bubbles in there. It might be kind of tricky if the filling's really thick, but you can always go in with a spoon and smooth it out. You want to go about halfway, put in your confit egg yolk, and then cover up the rest of it. Now here I've accidentally deleted the clip where I put in the egg yolks, but I'll show you guys later with the next flavors. Then you want to cover up with the rest of your chocolate. And you want to make sure that none of that filling got onto the very top edges of the chocolate, otherwise it won't make a good seal. And clean up your edges around the mold, make sure it's not too messy. And once it's set, you can just release it from your mold by pulling on it a little bit. And then very, very carefully, you want to push up from the bottom if you have a silicone mold like this, while peeling away at the sides. And then when you get to that bottom bit, it'll stick, and you'll have to be really, really patient trying to peel off that pattern. We do the same thing we did before for the white chocolate. Now here I'm just kind of swishing it around and making sure the sides get a good coating. And once that's set up, we put in our red bean paste filling. You can make your own sugar-free version really easily. So I'll put a recipe on the website for that and the link down below. Once you've got your egg yolk in there and your second batch of the filling, you want to leave a little gap so that you can put your little circle of fig paste on top. And you squish that down just a little bit so that it lays kind of flat with the rest of the filling. And next put in your sesame paste. Now if you really like black sesame paste and you sweeten it a little bit, you can just leave it plain, but I liked it with the white chocolate added. It makes it more like a black sesame truffle. Now let those set up in the fridge a bit if you like, if you're doing your chocolate in the fridge too. If not, let them kind of set at room temperature for a bit and then put the last bit of chocolate on top. Now I put a little bit too much chocolate on top. Don't go overboard with this because otherwise when you bite into it, you've got a really thick layer of chocolate at the bottom of the mooncake and the sides are really thin in comparison. Now you can see here the finished product, and now you see those right there, the ones that look kind of like a lighter color on the dark chocolate. That happened because I didn't wash out my mooncake mold after I did the white chocolate one, so there's a little bit left at the bottom in that design pattern part. I kind of like the look, I think it looks rustic. And the same thing happens for you. You can just tell people you did it on purpose. Now you guys see how the yolk is kind of not very well shaped and it's kind of flat? The only way to get around that is if you cure the yolks inside the egg. So you don't even crack the egg. And you surround your little quail egg with twice as much of your sweetener and your salt. And you let those sit for twice the amount of time. So originally if you're doing 48 hours, try and do it for 4 days. And set the gelling agent before they hit the bottom of the jar.